Hi, everybody. Royce in the house here. We're branching out a little bit tonight. We've been joined by Greg, and everybody knows Robbie Detroit, and we're going to talk a little bit about Muhammad Ali tonight. And first thing I want to ask is everybody ready?
Good to go here.
Okay. Okay, so anyway, tonight we're gonna float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble. You know, all they used to do with that with Bodini, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and then they go, rumble, young man, rumble, Anyway, I love that guy. If I was ever a fan of anybody, and I wasn't the kind of guy that went out and chased autographs and stuff like that. Hi, Caitlin's here. Caitlin's almost a sports expert herself. She knows more about sport, way more than I do. She knows more about every single sport than I do. But anyway, Caitlin's here. Hi, Caitlin. Good to see you. We're going to talk about Muhammad Ali tonight, as you know. I have links up for people to join us. But anyway, so getting back to Ali, I've never been really an autograph chaser. In fact, I've got a Mark Slaughter album that came with an autograph on it, and I've had all kinds of opportunities. But if there's anybody who I regret not shaking hands and getting an autograph from, it would be Muhammad Ali, because he is for sports. He's like my number one hero for sports. I mean, I followed his career. I've seen all his fights. I have a whole bunch of them on old VHS tapes. I couldn't even play them today. You know, I'm sure they've all been remade. I mean, all of the Ali Frazier fights and, Ali Foreman, fight and all those great epic fights. I have them all. And then I had another tape that tracked his career from Golden Gloves all the way up through being a champion. I had a tape that had all of that on there, a black and white tape. And I think I still have that here somewhere because I wouldn't have gotten rid of it. But I did notice years later that tape became available, like on DVDs and stuff like that. And it was the same content. But I would like to get that. But Muhammad Ali was always very special to me. And my first remembrance of Muhammad Ali, I was a kid. I don't know, it was like 63, 4. And our next door neighbor in Henderson, Nevada, where I grew up, Dave Larson, banged on the door at night. We opened the door and Dave came in just laughing his butt off, and he goes, have you guys been watching the fight or listening to it? It wasn't even on TV. You had to hear it, you had to listen to it on the radio, right? And we go, no, what are you talking about? He goes, it's unbelievable. Turn your radio on. Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay just knocked out Sonny Liston, who everybody thought no one could beat, And so we turned the radio on, and we're all standing up in the house with the radio on, and Ali's screaming, I am the greatest in the world. I'm the greatest fighter that ever lived. I'm the greatest. I am the greatest. And we're all looking at each other just like in shock. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of Cassius Clay, And we're all laughing and stuff like that. And after that, I paid attention to his career. And I was just a kid, I don't know, 12, 14 years old. But I started paying attention to his career. Me and all of my friends were huge fans back out there in Vegas. And stuff would come on, be on closed circuit TV and stuff like that. And anytime we could watch one of his fights in any way, shape, or form, TV, closed circuit, whatever, we watched his fight, and we all loved him. And we didn't give two shits about his, conscientious objector stuff. I mean, he lost his license to fight for, I think it was 4 years. I have all that in notes here and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a long time to be in your prime and lose that much time while you're in your prime, And to come back the way he did and have some of the fights he had. Well, first of all, let's see, Robbie. Now, you had a story you wanted to tell.
We didn't get a chance to meet Muhammad Ali. He had already passed. My daughter, I got two boys. I was an athlete growing up, and they never struck a lick at playing sports like their dad. And I have a 14-year-old daughter. And her and my uncle were out one day, and they come to me and they said, my daughter says, Dad, I want a box. And I said, okay, here we go. And so I bought all the gear and stuff. And the trainer that she had was Jimmy the Hurricane Haynes, which fought in the 90s He fought Ray Mercer. He fought Klitschko in Germany.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ray Mercer just devastated John Wayne's nephew, whatever. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but
Tommy Morrison.
Tommy Morrison, correct. Thank you.
But
yeah,
I thought it was going to be a phase, but that she started at 8 and she's still in it. We had been traveling, and she had been boxing for about 4 years when she entered the Knoxville Golden Gloves. That's where Big John Tate back in the 80s, a heavyweight champion of the world.
I remember him.
Yeah, he fought out of the Knoxville gym. She won the Knoxville Golden Gloves at 12 years of age.
Wow.
In the 95-pound weight class. Well, we had been traveling for 4 years. We fought in New Orleans, Memphis, Huntington, West Virginia, Louisville, Kentucky, Atlanta, Georgia. She was 9-1, and I knew she was getting tired. And Muhammad Ali's daughter was coming to the area to speak at a college, so I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for a reward for all of her hard work for the past 4 years and winning the Golden Gloves. I got a one-on-one session with her with Layla Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was her reward. I got a picture here right here I can show right quick after we get it on there. That's me and Layla. Can you see it?
Okay, yeah. Let me actually bring you in closer again. Oh yeah, yeah.
And she actually, you see, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm 6 foot tall. She's about 2 taller than me. Her arms and hands are bigger than me.
Yeah, no, she's a big girl.
Yeah. My daughter's got pictures with her too. They keep in touch.
Oh, no kidding.
That's Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Layla Ali is my daughter's idol in the boxing world. So
okay,
that's what motivated her. She has a style like every boxer has her own style, but she kind of goes. If you watch the Layla fight, she's sort of got a mean machine gunning type attack, and my daughter has the same.
Okay, wow. Well, that's pretty cool. You know, I was telling you about my first knowledge of Muhammad Ali. You know, he was the youngest heavyweight champion in the world of all, #1. You know, he was. Let's see. I wanted to back up a little bit. You know, I've got a long list of his early accomplishments. I just wanted to run down a few of them. It's pretty small writing here, but I want to go over them, and then we'll get to Greg and hear a story, and we'll see if anybody else has got something to tell. I've got a bunch of stuff I want to go over, but you know, in Muhammad Ali in 1959, he won the National Golden Gloves light heavyweight champion. In 59, he won the National Amateur Athletic Union champion. Then in 1960, he won the National Golden Gloves light heavyweight champion. 1960, the amateur athlete champion. 1960, he won the gold medal in the Rome Olympics. We all knew about that. And I watched that fight. It was on that video I was telling you guys about that kind of spans his career. And it was a Polish boy he beat in the last fight. And they were interviewing him after the fight about winning the gold. He goes, well, you know, he was determined. You know, he was determined. That Polish boy was really determined. He wanted to beat me, but I was able to pull it out, you know. And it was a tough fight, too. But then he won the world heavyweight champion. He was world heavyweight champion from 64 to 67. And then the Martin Luther King, you know, he was a real advocate for, you know, black rights and stuff. When he grew up, he couldn't even drink out of some of the water fountains and things like that, you know, because of his color.
He was his Olympic medal over the Louisville Bridge because he came after winning that, and they wouldn't serve him in the restaurant. And he said, "What is this gold medal if I can't get served in a restaurant?" He supposedly threw it in the river there in Louisville.
Wow. Yeah, I never heard that story before.
Never heard that one either. Wow.
But he's got the biggest list of accomplishments and awards that he was given. But one that I get kind of a kick in the ass out of. Well, we got Dan, Just the Facts on here. Dan, Just the Facts has a great show. He covers all kinds of stuff. He took videos when the space shuttle blew up, and they've been used by everybody, and they've got millions of hits on them, you know, and things like that. And Dan covers a wide range of topics, and his show is called Just the Facts. And then we've got Robert Rowe on here. The Rock and Roll Podcast has a show. And of course, my good friend Caitlin's got a show called Caitlin's Corner. A bunch of us have shows, and Caitlin's a lot of fun. And like I was saying earlier, Caitlin knows more about sports than I'll ever know. I mean, she just seems like she knows every individual player on every team and every sport, you know. And but anyway, let me show a couple of pictures here before we go any further. I have got a lot of people don't know this. Now, this started out as strictly a music podcast, unboxing vinyl albums. And my collection has gotten really big around the corner. I had to build shelves and stuff. But a lot of people don't know that in 1963, before Muhammad Ali won the world champion title from Sonny Liston, Muhammad Ali made an album, and this is it. I am the greatest catch and play. He was not yet the champion. And I mean, I just love that. You know, I really wanted to find that, but if I ordered it, I got it late in January or something like that. I discovered this too late. I didn't know it existed. So anyway, yeah. Muhammad Ali made an album. It hit number 61 on the charts, 61, and was nominated for a Grammy.
Wow, I never knew that.
And let me tell you though, before you think he was singing, it was him being funny. You know, he was a wonderful comedian. You know, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. But I mean, the story about launching Sonny Liston like a satellite and all this stuff. But he's got the best poems and stories, and he's got stories and poems on this album. Number 61 on the charts, and nominated for a Grammy. Anyway,
hey Roy, on the album, it's, you know how the songs are numbered. On his, it says round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4.
That's great. I'm gonna have to order it. I mean, I love his poems and stuff. He was a very, very funny man. You know, when you saw him saying that stuff that I'm talking about, the funny stuff, and being cocky, and he's the greatest in the world, and you know, he's gonna beat so and so. A champ should be pretty like me. They shouldn't. You know, he's ugly. These champs should be pretty like me. When all you're doing is hearing him and not seeing him, a lot of people had a bad attitude toward him. They wanted to see him get his ass kicked, you know, because he was too cocky. But when you see him saying that, everybody around him is busting a gut laughing, and he's being a comedian. And once you realize he's trying to make everybody laugh, it's a whole different perspective when you see that.
Yeah, he's the trash talking. He was the original. You know, you see guys now.
And I understand that he learned that from wrestler Gorgeous George. And that's how George brought money to professional wrestling was by talking all that smack. And Ali was sitting in the audience one time watching him do it, from what I read once. And he learned, well, this is the way you bring the money in. You just talk shit about all your opponents, and you know, and that's what he did. And and it worked. It really worked.
He was a great promoter, no doubt about it.
Great promoter. So Greg, now tell us about the story that you had, or stories.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm a huge sports fan. I mean, it's in my blood, as we were kind of talking about off air. My grandfather was kind of a local boxing trainer. Helped out a guy by the name of Pat Murphy, who, if you know anyone around here or any kind of boxing circles around here, you know the name Pat Murphy. He's you know, had a gym for years at the bottom of Cuesta Grade, and trained a lot of guys, and my grandfather was really, really good friends with him and helped him out in his gym. So at a young age, I was in Pat Murphy's gym, and my grandfather was always trying to get me to box, but I preferred kind of the baseball, basketball, football. I love the sport, and I'm in awe of what boxers can do, because not only can they give punishment, the punishment they can take is, there's not too many people that can take shots like boxers can take. So I never wanted to get hit. So that's why I could never get in the ring, and never, you know, I may hit the bags a little bit, jump rope, and that kind of thing when I was young. But my grandpa would always try to tell me, you'd be a good middleweight. You got wide shoulders. And Grandpa, I'll stick to basketball and baseball. I don't want to get hit. So, at a very young age, I was exposed to boxing, and we've been watching fights, since I was a little kid. Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh yeah,
that was kind of my. Muhammad Ali was a little bit before my time, but I kind of caught the tail end of his career.
Right.
Unfortunately, it didn't end too well for him against Larry Holmes and such.
No.
He probably hung on a little bit too long, but that's kind of the story.
He definitely did
with a lot of boxers. Yeah. So back in the early 2000s, I went to an event in Florida called ESPN The Weekend, and what it was ESPN would set up shop at Disney World and just do a bunch of live kind of events. Had a lot of professional athletes kind of on hand, big parades, and just kind of had live, athletes kind of do stuff live, question and answers, just a full on ESPN live at Walt Disney World for a few days. So me and my girlfriend at the time got tickets for that and just kind of partook in the whole event for 3 days back in Orlando. So, Drew Brees was there, Ben Roethlisberger, Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, a who's who of all the great athletes.
That's great.
Surprisingly, Muhammad Ali was not there. When we flew home, we had to fly over, we flew LAX to Arizona, then Arizona to Orlando. When we came back, we flew the same route home. Well, we got stuck in Arizona, and our flight got delayed, so we had to stay the night in Arizona. So the next day, we got rescheduled and flew out of Phoenix that morning. And sure enough, we got on the plane, and I mean, to this day, I can't believe it. They sat me and my girlfriend right behind Muhammad Ali, Layla Ali, and an assistant that he had that was kind of carrying the bags for him and was kind of a guy that just helped him out. And we literally sat the row right behind them. They weren't sitting first class. They were just sitting in regular coach. And I mean, when they walked him onto the plane, I thought like this can't be real, because I'm a huge sports fan. I'm a huge memorabilia guy. I'm a huge autograph collector, pictures with athletes. I was an athlete in high school, baseball and basketball, but I've been a huge fan of the professional sports for years. So the fact that Muhammad Ali was getting on the plane that we were on and was sitting right in front of us, and we shouldn't even have been on that plane. We got delayed the night before and literally got put on that plane the next morning. So the stars were aligned, and we flew from Phoenix, Arizona, back to LAX, and my girlfriend was just like really kind of nervous because she was like, "Don't blow it, don't do anything stupid, Greg, don't say anything," because she was really nervous, and I was like, there is no way I'm not going to get off this plane and at least ask him for a picture. I have to, like,
right.
That's just what I do. So when the plane landed and they started clearing everyone off the plane, I just stayed put. I didn't move. And so they got everybody off, and literally the last 3 people on the plane were me, Muhammad Ali, his daughter Layla, and his assistant. And I wasn't going to move. So my girlfriend just tore off of there, and she was like, "You're going to embarrass me. I'm out of here." So she grabbed her bags and just took off and got off the plane. And so, it was just all of us sitting there, and the flight attendants and the pilots were getting off. And so I said something. I kind of stood up and said, "Hey, I don't want to leave here, but I have to at least ask, Miss Layla, could I get a picture with your dad?" And so she said, "You know what? Daddy always loved the cameras. He was never afraid of the cameras. I don't think that'd be a problem." So the assistant kind of got up, kind of got the bags out of the way, the carry-ons, and he was kind of taking a little nap on the flight from Phoenix to LA. So they kind of went over to him, said something to him, kind of perked him up. I kind of kept my distance. And then when he perked up, he kind of gave me a fist and said, "How's it going, young man?" Kind of mumbled it to him. And I said, "This is nothing but an honor, sir. I'm a huge fan of yours, and I really appreciate you taking the time to take a picture with me." And he said, "Well, you better get in here." And so I kind of squeezed in the row next to him. I got the picture sitting right here, so I'll show you the picture here when I'm done yapping. But kind of posed up next to him. And
take your time.
Yeah, he was kind of his head was kind of drooping down a little bit. So his daughter said, "Daddy, get your chin up. This man wants a picture." And so he perked right up. And at the time, I had one of those disposable cameras. This was before cell phone cameras. So I had a disposable camera, that I gave to Layla, and she squared right up and boom, took the picture. And the rest is history. They got him up and walked him off the plane, and a golf cart came and picked him up and loaded him on the golf cart, and everyone was chanting his name, Ali, Ali, and like KTLA was there, camera work. They were videotaping him, and they got him on the golf cart and just scooted him, through the crowd and got him out of there. So, I was literally the last person off the plane with a big smile on my face, and it was just one of those things that I'll never forget. It was a real brief kind of back and forth, not a lot of back and forth of conversation. He was a little bit tired from the flight, obviously. But come to find out, he was in Phoenix to watch the LA Lakers and Suns play, and Kobe Bryant had gotten him tickets to sit front row. So he was at the Laker game the night before. That's why he was in Phoenix. And him and Kobe had kind of met, back in the locker room and had chatted a little bit. And then he stayed the night in Phoenix and just so happened to be on the same flight that I was on the way home. So,
God, that's fantastic.
I've met some great athletes. Nothing compares to meet Muhammad Ali. I've got some pictures with some pretty big legends, but nothing compares to the picture and the little bit of time that I got to spend with Ali. So that's one story. There's another local story that involves Pat Murphy. In '79, he did a demonstration at the CMC. He came out with some trainers and actually did a little boxing demo at the California Men's Colony. And so Pat Murphy had reached out to a connection of his and just said, "Hey, we know you're going to be in San Luis Obispo. Would you mind, if you got the time, coming over to San Luis Obispo Junior High and doing a little demo with some of my fighters?" And the trainer said, "Hey, I'll talk to Muhammad and see kind of how he's feeling. We're going to do the CMC thing, kind of a prior engagement, but we'll be in touch." And sure enough, the very next day, he called Pat's people, and he showed up at San Luis Obispo Junior High and did another boxing demo with about 10 people. No money, just did it for the love of the sport. My dad had told me that story, that there was literally only 10 people in the gym, and he spent about 2 hours just doing a boxing demo at San Luis Obispo Junior High back in, I think it was '79, '80. So he kind of made his way out here and had done some things with some of the local fighters here and did a little demonstration at the CMC also. So, the great thing about Ali that I've heard that kind of ties into that story is he loved the sport so much, and he loved to kind of donate his time and, give advice and give demonstrations and would really do it just for the love of the sport. There wasn't a big paycheck involved. Right. He just loved kind of giving back to the community, and he really was a people's champion. I mean, fans loved him. It didn't matter, everybody, there were guys that didn't like him, obviously, because he was cocky, but he was such a people's champion that stories like that kind of prove that this guy just loved being around people. He loved doing magic tricks. He was a big magician, so he loved doing magic tricks for the kids. Loved giving back time to do demonstrations and things like that. So the fact that he took a picture with me and took that little bit of time out of his schedule to take a picture and kind of chat with me, his daughter couldn't have been nicer. His assistant that was with him was a really nice guy. Just all class. Couldn't have been a cooler moment in my life that I'll never forget. So here's the picture of me on the plane with the legend right there, if you can see that.
Wow. Greg, what year was this?
This was around, I want to say, 2006. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I'd have to go back to ESPN the weekend because it was one of the last times that they did that weekend, and it was the day after ESPN the weekend. It was about a 3-day event they did. So it was the day after we missed the flight and then got put on that connecting flight the very next day. So I want to say it was 06, maybe 07.
Okay. And where did you go to high school at?
I went to Atascadero High School, class of 93.
What year?
Class of 93.
93. Did you know Amber Eddings?
I do know Amber. I put 2 and 2 together, and I figured that was probably your daughter, Amber. I know Amber, and the last time I talked to Amber, we talked about the Andrew Dice Clay show at the winery. Me and a buddy went to that stand-up comedy show, and let me tell you, it was awesome venue, awesome show. We sat right up front, so that was a couple years ago. So that was the last time that I checked in with Amber. But it seems like she's doing great.
Yeah, that is my daughter. I saw a lot of those shows at Rava that her and her husband were actually bringing in.
Awesome.
Yeah, they really were. They were great shows. That's a fact. But anyway,
that was the first time I'd ever been to that venue. Actually, that was the first time I'd ever been to Rava, and me and my friend that went were just couldn't be more impressed. It was awesome. I'm a big Dice Clay fan going way back, so it was it was pretty cool. And I before the show it came on, I'd messaged Amber, and she gave me all the insight and gave me all the deets on it, and it was that was a fun night for sure.
No, that's great. Yeah, we saw a bunch of shows there that they put on. They had a good thing going there for a while. She lives up in Tacoma, Washington now. She's a pharmaceutical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know she moved. That's cool.
Yeah. So people like Greg Mueller and
oh yeah,
Yeah,
Played a lot of basketball with Greg Mueller and Gary. Played a lot of basketball with both Greg and both Mueller brothers, going back to the Tascadero Recreation League, Adult League back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Those guys love playing hoops, man.
Sean Knopf?
What's that?
Sean Knopf.
Yeah, I know Sean. I actually played baseball with Sean at the San Luis Obispo Hardball League.
Yeah, he manages over. I guess he kind of semi-retired now. Manages over here at Santa Maria Brewery. That used to be the Harley shop.
Yeah, he managed a team called the Tigers here in I live in San Luis, so we played all of our games at Sinsheimer Park on Sundays. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I know Sean too.
Yeah, that's great. John Hernandez, you know John Hernandez?
Doesn't sound familiar. Would maybe have to see the face to match the name, but the name offhand doesn't sound familiar.
Right. Okay, cool. Anyway, just curious. Yeah, that was a great story, and I knew about that boxing gym. I'd done some work up there at that house. I still can't think of it was McCarthy's or something like that, the automotive. He had a used car lot, the guy that owned that little house there at the base of the Cuesta Grade, where the gym was, where the boxing gym was. And
back in the day, Pat Murphy was actually training Chuck Liddell before he transitioned to MMA. So Chuck was obviously a wrestler at Cal Poly. Yeah. Chuck was a wrestler at Cal Poly, and then was kind of not sure if he wanted to get into the boxing ring. So at that time was kind of training with Pat and learned a lot of his striking skills from Pat, and then got involved with a guy named John Hackelman, and Chuck's obviously MMA career took off from there, and kind of the legend was born from there. But Pat used to work with a lot of guys. He's kind of a local boxing legend. So
yeah, well, I've got a little story. You know, I had a bunch of friends that used to like to go to Vegas, and some of them gambled a lot, and Vegas would actually send a jet to pick them up to Paso Airport.
Yeah.
One of them called me and said, "Hey, Royce, would you like to go see Chuck Liddell fight?" It was the third fight with the was he Canadian? It was the third fight with that same guy.
Oh, Randy Couture.
Randy Couture, yeah. Okay, it was
Yeah.
their third fight. Randy Couture won the first one. Liddell won the second one, and this was going to be the final.
The third one, right?
Okay, so we're at that fight, and so we fly in there, get flown in from Paso Robles, and they give my buddy a suite. We're not even spending the night to put our jackets in, right? And then the limo takes us over to the auditorium where the fight's going to be, the third fight. And the fight's going on, and it was really kind of a trip when you got there, because when you walk into the lobby, everybody was strutting around like everybody in there was an MMA fighter, right? it was kind of funny, you know. And so we're finally watching the fight, and there was several preliminaries, and now we're waiting for the big fight to start, and there was like an intermission. And so I'm standing in the aisle, you know, and I look down the aisle, and walking straight at me is Tommy Hitman Hearns.
Oh,
I love Tommy Hearns, you know. And another friend of mine was there that was sitting up a little higher than me, and I knew where he was. And I would have to describe him as almost the biggest fight fan on the planet. He lived for it, you know. And and so Tommy Hearns walks right up to me, and I reach my hand out, and I say, "Tommy, man, I always loved watching your fights." He goes, "Hey, thank you, man. Just a really nice guy." And I looked up over my shoulder at the guy I just mentioned that was a huge fight fan. It looked like he was about to start crying, that I was shaking hands with Thomas Hearns. But anyway,
I'm sure Robbie Detroit can speak on Tommy Hearns. He's a Detroit legend, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Robbie, were you a big fan of Thomas Hearns?
Yeah, I was raised in Detroit. Thomas Hitman Hearns, he was something else. The fights he had with Marvin Hagler and
They say that's the best 2 rounds of boxing, that fight with Hagler. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What a fight!
Yeah, Marvin Hagler and the guy from Puerto Rico. What was his name? No Mas.
No, that's oh God, Fists of Steel. That's No Mas. That's
Duran.
Roberto Duran. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knocked Duran out too.
Yeah. Hearns could hit, but he had a power punch.
Yeah. No, he did. You know, tell me that wasn't boxing's golden era. We haven't seen anything since. Oh my God! You know, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, you know, all those guys. Roberto Duran, just like Superman for the longest time. Then he kept moving up in weight like everybody does. And of course, Ali and Foreman and Frazier and Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes.
Hey, Royce.
An unsung superstar. He used to train with Muhammad Ali, and he was the next one after Muhammad Ali that was a champion for a long period of time. But he was a fantastic fighter, Larry Holmes. You know.
Yeah, at one point Larry Holmes was 40-0 until he suffered his first loss. But
yeah,
I mean that's his record. He was knocking everybody out. I mean, he was a Hall of Famer. You know.
Yeah. Another fight I got to go back and see in Vegas was let's see. The Golden Boy.
Oscar De La Hoya.
Oscar De La Hoya and Sugar Shane Woodley. I got to go see that fight live.
Yeah.
Too. That was you know, we didn't have the best of seats that time, and I was pretty far away. And it looked to me, watching the fight from my point of view, it looked like Oscar won the fight. And then when I saw it up close on TV, it was obvious that Shane Mosley won the fight. But it's funny, that different perspective from that distance, you know.
Yeah. Now, Royce, my daughter trained with Oscar De La Hoya's son, Ivan De La Hoya.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yep.
You know, I boxed a little bit, like when I was a kid. I mean, like, let me see. I would say like 6th grade. We had we had these kind of left over from World War II. They were army barracks. The ones we lived in were called Victory Village, appropriately named for victory in World War II. Then across the highway was Carver Park, named after George Washington Carver. Anyway, so right in the middle of Victory Village, there was a boxing gym, and there were some pretty damn good fighters there. And I started going up just to train a little bit and stuff like that. And you know what's crazy? For a while there, the middleweight champion of the world, Sugar Bear Bryant, I think was his name was what his name was. He read our water meters. He drove a little Cushman truckster and got out in front of every house and lifted the lid off, you know, and read the water.
Wow.
Even though he was the middleweight champion of the world, you couldn't quit your day job because the pay wasn't that good.
Wow.
As a fighter, you know.
Man.
Now I'm going back to, you know, the early 60s, you know, early and mid 60s, you know, when I was like in elementary school. But I thought that was kind of crazy. But I'd go up there and train and stuff like that. And there were some real good fighters that fought in Vegas and stuff like that were, and I was just a kid. But the best night I ever had, I boxed 3 different guys, and one of them was kind of a bully at our school. He's always trying to start. I knocked him down 3 times. You know? One of the times I even stepped on his foot and hit him and knocked him down.
That's an old trick right there.
He never bothered me again after that night, you know. I got a couple of pictures I'm going to show just for fun. Let's see. So later on in life, I mean, me and the boys, I mean, we never ran from an altercation. In fact, if I was being honest, I'd say that my friends started most of them. But there was a time. Here's a picture. That's me, bottom left. I'm an instructor at in Orange County at Frank Wolsey's Kung Fu Sansu Studios. And
Nice.
So anyway, so I was doing that. This picture is probably like 74 or 5. And so we were working out in there, and I went all the way up through black belt. And I have a video. I wanted to try to take a couple of snippets out of it, but I didn't get time. And I didn't know if I could actually anyway. But there was a real cast of characters doing that back then. And, you know, in the school that I was in, I mean, it was a real cocky attitude from the top down. The guy that owned them all, he owned 5 of them. He was very, very intelligent. And he learned to do what all of the gyms down there were doing. Take you for a demonstration, take you through the studio, get you all excited. Sorry, boys. Get my hands off everything for a minute. The next thing you know, you're signing a contract, right? So all his instructors would bring you in, give you a demonstration, you know, have somebody throw a few punches at you and do things to them, and then get you to sign a contract. And then he'd turn around and sell the contracts to the bank, you know. And when the movie Kung Fu was on with David Carradine, Kung Fu was so popular, it was like there was a line outside the door to sign up, you know. And so he was selling, you know, 500, 800, 1,000 contracts a month to the bank for cash, you know.
Wow.
You know, and the guy made a fortune. He bought a mansion in Huntington Harbor with a boat, his own boat tied to his own dock. You know, we were there for a party one time, and he had a room full of animal heads from all over the world and stuff like that, his game room, and big fish and everything. And I mean, the guy made a fortune. on kung fu lessons.
Wow.
And then when the business started waning, he actually started doing subdivisions and stuff.
Yeah, mixed martial arts has really taken off. It's crazy how popular the UFC is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like this is Muhammad Ali. This is a pencil drawing from an artist by the name of Chris Brown, and he's focused a lot on musicians. I have a Jimi Hendrix that someone bought me and sent me that he did, but he's just a fan. Look at the detail. This is a pencil drawing.
Wow.
Yeah, and these are for sale. He sells them. He sells prints of them. He keeps the original and just continues to make prints. But I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. And like I said, I have one hanging over here at Jimi Hendrix. And I asked him today. I said, "Do you have any pictures of Muhammad Ali? I'll put it up on the screen, and I'll give you a shout out and promote your business." His name is Chris Burns, Burns.
That's great work.
He's on Facebook, and he's got all kinds of stuff like this. He's got all the musicians: Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, all of them, Elvis, you name it, the Beatles. He's got all the musicians he's done, but then a lot of other people too. And I was really happy because I had not seen this picture before when I asked him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, go ahead, take it, use it on the show, whatever you want to do." And I mean, I love his work. It's really fantastic. Chris Burns. Anybody wants to look at some great artwork, just go to Facebook and type in a search for Chris Burns, and he'll come up. And this stuff is great. So anyway, okay, I'll take that down now. Let's see. I've got a bunch of other pictures. I think I'll throw this one up because this was like the start right here. This Muhammad Ali just won Olympic gold.
How big he is, everybody else.
Oh, I know. I mean, these guys are like lined up with these two with his shoulders.
He's about a foot taller.
Pardon me?
He's about a foot taller than everybody else.
He is. And I thought he was taller, but I read where he was 6'3", which is still plenty tall.
That's right. His daughter's 6'2".
Oh yeah, that's what you said. She's very tall for a girl. So anyway, so that was a picture. I've got more pictures here too. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about accomplishment. I mean, Muhammad Ali was a heavyweight champ from 64 to 67. And then again from 74 to 78, and again from 78 to 79. He's in the Boxing Hall of Fame. He's in the internet. In 87, he went into the Boxing Hall of Fame. 90, he went into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. In 96, let's see, light Olympic. Oh, he lit the Olympic torch. I can't. My writing is so sloppy. I'm trying to get through this tonight. And so he lit the Olympic torch in 96, and I'll never forget that. And I felt so bad when he developed Parkinson's, and I always call it Parkinson's disease. And then I read where there was a difference between Parkinson's disease and Parkinson's syndrome, which is more too many blows to your brainstem, getting punched too many times, And I guess, you get that, you're in the spotlight, and it just becomes so addicting. I mean, people just don't know when to quit. And I still, what was it? I read a couple of weeks ago where Mike Tyson was trading for a comeback. I mean, come on, Mike. Do you want to wind up with something like that too? I mean, anyway, I hope he doesn't. To be honest with you, we don't need to see that. So anyway, first knocked out Sonny Liston in 1964, and that was in Miami Beach. And we talked about that when my neighbor Dave Larson came over. I'm actually friends on Facebook with two of his daughters that I grew up with that are more or less my age. And he had a son, Kenny, that was my age. And they had a younger brother that came along after I was practically grown named Danny. And me and Danny are good friends on Facebook. We talk all the time. It's pretty cool. They were my next door neighbors. We had a lot of fun living next door to them. So anyway, so he knocked out Sonny Liston. That was the first time he became the champion of the world. The second time was when he knocked out George Foreman in 1974 in Zaire, and that was called the Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah, he was a heavy underdog in that fight. No one thought he could beat Foreman. My dad said Foreman was like just this scary giant grizzly bear that nobody wanted to mess with. He would get in bar fights.
Yeah, being compared to Sonny Liston as a monster that no one could beat.
Right.
And you know what? I've seen that fight. I have it on a VHS tape. I've probably watched it 10 times, and And you know, I don't know if they probably wouldn't allow the rope-a-dope today, so I don't know how it would have turned out.
Right.
Laid on the ropes and let Foreman just exhaust himself.
Punched himself out.
At the end, Foreman was so arm weary he couldn't even defend himself, and that's when Ali popped to life like he had all the energy left in the world and knocked him out. You know, but I mean, it was a great fight to watch. You know, and to see Ali, you know, yeah, he was up against the ropes, but the punches he was taking, you know, and it doesn't matter that some of them are hitting your arms, but they're still hitting you in the side and things like that. I mean, you're still taking a beating. He would really take, and he took a punch really well. He got punched hard many times, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kenny Norton broke his jaw.
Broke his jaw. And Kenny Norton won that first fight because of that. Now, Kenny Norton will tell you he won all three of them, you know, and I watched them all, and they were all very, very close, you know.
They said the hardest puncher back in that day with that group was Ernie Shavers.
Ernie Shavers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was another big, strong guy. You know?
George said he had the hardest punch in boxing.
Yeah, okay. It was something that always comes up, especially when Mike Tyson was on top and just mowing down the whole field effortlessly. Was who do you think would have won, Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali? Well, I came from the era where I loved Muhammad Ali, and I always say Muhammad Ali. But the people that were like 25 years younger than me, 30 years younger than me, they all wanted to say Mike Tyson because they thought he was invincible, and they don't really remember Muhammad Ali, or nor were they old enough to even watch his fights.
Right. Tyson couldn't have caught him.
What's that?
Tyson couldn't have caught him. Muhammad Ali was too fast.
Well, see, that's kind of the way I feel too. What about you, Greg? I mean, you're kind of more of an in-between.
Well, I'm one of the younger guys that you're probably talking about, but different than a lot of other people's opinion. I think Mike Tyson was overrated, and that might shock a lot of people. But if you look at Mike Tyson's resume, who did he beat that was a big name? You know, Muhammad Ali, he had some losses on his record, but he fought in an era where Joe Frazier, Ernie Shavers, George Foreman, Sonny Liston, I mean, the list goes on. And you know, it's hard to name a great fighter that Mike Tyson beat. I mean, anyone that Mike Tyson fought that was great, he lost to. Lennox Lewis beat him. Evander Holyfield beat him. Right. I mean, James Buster Douglas wasn't by any means a Hall of Fame fighter. He was a lot better than people realize. A lot of people don't know how good James Buster Douglas actually was. But whenever Tyson fought someone that was of his equal or maybe was considered a good fighter of that era, he lost. So, you know, I think Mike Tyson's best win was maybe a Riddick Bowe. Or I'm sorry, not a Riddick Bowe, a Razor Ruddock was a big name. Razor Ruddock. He won the name. He beat Michael Spinks, but Michael Spinks was not really a heavyweight. Michael Spinks went up from middleweight to light heavyweight, and then went up to heavyweight to fight Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson knocked him out in like 2 rounds. But Michael Spinks wasn't a natural heavyweight. So
he wasn't.
The argument that I would make would be that Muhammad Ali had the better career, was the better fighter because he had a better resume. So, you know, a lot of people my age probably won't say that because, like you said, Royce, people are kind of obsessed with how Mike Tyson went through the competition. And make no mistake, Mike Tyson was a Hall of Fame fighter and had a great punch. I mean, he's one of the best knockout artists probably of all time. But you look at his resume, and it doesn't match up to Ali's resume, in my opinion.
You know, Greg, I'm really glad to hear you say that because I always felt the same thing. I thought Muhammad Ali's, you know, era was the golden era of boxing. And
no doubt.
I think there could have been half a dozen guys or more that would have beat Tyson, you know?
Sure.
How would Tyson have stood up against George Foreman? How would he have stood up against Joe Frazier? You know, Smoking Joe Frazier, Ernie Shavers, Ken Norton. There was so many great, even in his prime, well, there's so many of them. God, the one that came after Ali, that was. Tyson fought Larry Holmes,
but Larry Holmes was really old. I mean, he was way past his prime.
Yeah, and Larry Holmes was trying to get a final paycheck out of the
last payday for Larry Holmes, and it didn't.
And getting the hype going and stuff like that, but
that third fight with Joe Frazier, when Ali fought Joe Frazier, he fought in the Philippines, and it was about 110 degrees. And in the 12th round, Joe Frazier couldn't answer the bell, and Ali won because basically Joe Frazier just couldn't get off his stool. And after the fight, Ali said, "This is what death must feel like."
He was cornered through in the towel because he couldn't see. He was still
Right.
game. He still wanted to get out there and start swinging, but he couldn't see anymore.
Yeah, after that fight was over, Muhammad Ali said, this must be what death feels like. Because he said that was the closest that he ever felt to dying was in that trilogy fight with Joe Frazier.
Yeah, well, that's what he said. Yeah, imagine 15 rounds in that heat. And they traded blows every round.
Slugfest. Total slugfest.
Those guys. They don't box 15 rounds no more because of those guys.
Right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They saw the punishment they took and what it did to them. I mean,
I've watched a lot of documentaries about those fights, that era, a lot of those fighters. I'm probably a lot more educated than a lot of fight fans, like you talked about, the Mike Tyson kind of guys that just think he was the best ever and whatever.
Right.
I think the biggest bummer for me was that Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali didn't bury the hatchet. They till the bitter end, they weren't friends, and Joe Frazier was really was still very hurt by kind of some of the things that Ali said about him, and kind of one of the bummers was that they weren't able to kind of bury the hatchet and before they both passed away, obviously.
Frazier he didn't mind the trash talk, but when he called him an Uncle Tom, that really hurt him.
Right.
Well, I was gonna say that they kind of cast it that way, where Ali was the champion of his race and Frazier was an Uncle Tom. And which fight was it? I think it was the third fight when the locals were all chanting Ali Boombaya, Ali Boombaya, and somebody finally said, "What does that mean?" And they said, "It means Ali, kill him."
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the people's champion, But like I said, I've watched a lot of documentaries, and from what I kind of gathered from Joe Frazier, he was not an Uncle Tom at all. Like, he was a man of the people. He did a lot for his city. He was raised really had a tough upbringing, and was really kind of like Ali in a lot of ways. Did a lot for the black community. Joe Frazier did. And when Ali was out of boxing for that 4 years, when he got his suspended, Joe Frazier used to give Muhammad Ali money during that 4 years because Muhammad Ali couldn't work. No one wanted to hire him. The boxing commission stripped him of his license. And so Joe Frazier actually would give Muhammad Ali money during that 4 years. And was really, at that time, was still a pretty good friend to Ali. And so Joe Frazier kind of always felt like Ali kind of crossed him. And to the bitter end, they never were able to kind of bury the hatchet. And Muhammad Ali always said it was kind of to promote fights, and he was kind of just said the things he said to kind of sell tickets. But Joe Frazier never really forgave him for that, and that was kind of a bummer to me, because I liked both of them. Doing kind of reading about both of them and watching documentaries about both of them. I was a fan of both of the guys, and I think that's probably the biggest bummer that I could speak on, was the fact that they were never able to kind of make amends and kind of died. Joe Frazier died, really still bitter at Muhammad Ali, which, that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, that really is unfortunate, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, there's two legends, they were involved in probably the best trilogy in combat history. You'd hope that after the years had passed, they would be able to kind of shake hands and kind of drift off into the sunset together. But that, unfortunately, never happened.
I saw them in interviews together, well after their careers. And when Muhammad Ali was, really pretty impaired, and Muhammad Ali would go, hey, George. George was trying to talk, and Muhammad Ali keep interrupting with things like, "Hey, George, remember this?" He'd make some face at him that he'd make or something like that.
He called you a gorilla.
Yeah, when I get the gorilla in Manila, there was that. When you watch the Thriller in Manila. Something happens, the fight gets postponed, and Ali's really bummed because he's over there, he's ready for the fight gets postponed, and he's got this little rubber gorilla when you watch the tape, and he goes, "When I get the gorilla in Manila," and he's punching the little rubber gorilla, and he's making fun of Frazier.
Well, there was that great Howard Cosell interview where they both kind of wrestled each other. Howard Cosell was kind of in the middle. A lot of conspiracies that was a setup and they weren't actually really fighting. But that interview is on YouTube and it's got like so many views. I mean, that's Muhammad Ali promoting at his best, probably right there. And Joe Frazier, he just knew how to get under Joe's skin. He just knew how to push those buttons and And
Right,
I think Joe was more of a guy that let his boxing do the talking. He wasn't a man for a lot of words. So,
yeah, he had a mean left hook too.
oh man.
Well, Ali was known for trash talking for sure, world over, and
Frazier fought on
most of the time he could call the round he was going to finish the fight in, and a lot of times you almost felt like he prolonged the fight just to do it the round he called. You know, he just kind of peppered the guy and stayed away and danced, and he wasn't trying to end it sooner. It didn't appear sometimes, and but he was you know, like I said, the youngest heavyweight champ of all time. You know, of course, his name was Cassius Clay. He switched it to Muhammad Ali in 1964 as a result of his Islamic faith, and then he refused to fight in the Vietnam War, was opposed to it. He was arrested, charged with draft evasion, stripped of his championship title, and later the court actually convicted him after they'd stripped him of all his titles, the governing bodies in boxing. Then he was actually convicted, but he appealed to the Supreme Court, and after 4 years it was overturned, you know. And a few months later, he fought another undefeated fighter, which we've been talking about, is Joe Frazier in Madison Square Garden. The fight lived up to its name, and Ali lost that fight. That was a fight he got hit in the jaw, and his jaw was all swollen up and got knocked down. And that was a hell of a fight. Those fights are just, they're like nothing you'll watch today in boxing.
Right.
I mean, those guys hit each other for 15 rounds. It was just incredible.
See, Royce, Frazier, he got back at Ali because Ali said, well, I changed my name from Cassius Clay to Ali because that was my slave name. So Frazier used that against Ali. He always called him Cassius. He said, man, what are you always calling me Cassius for? I'm Ali. He said, that's my slave name. He knew that got at Ali, so he called him Cassius Clay the whole time.
Well, and he would also say, because that's the name your mom and dad gave you or something like that, you know.
Yeah, he never called him Muhammad Ali. He never once called him that in public.
No, he wouldn't. He refused to. So that's something, another reason why, you know, that animosity. But anyway, their first fight, their trilogy is probably the greatest fights of all time, in my opinion. And the first one was just simply named The Fight of the Century, or The Fight. And it happened in 1971. It was viewed by over 300 million people worldwide.
Wow.
300 million people watching two undefeated heavyweights fight, you know. And let's see. Yeah. Okay.
I think that one was in Madison Square Garden. Is that correct?
It was a 15-round fight, and Frazier won on points. The second fight was called Super Fight 2, and that was in Madison Square Garden in 1970.
Oh, okay. The number 2 was.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden. And Ali won that one, unanimous decision. Then it was a third one we were just talking about, where started the 15th round, Frazier's corner threw the towel out because he could no longer see. So Ali got that as a TKO.
I think that was called The Thrill in Manila.
And Royce, Layla Ali fought Frazier's daughter. There was the daughter's fought as well. Too.
That's right.
I like that.
I forgot about that, Robbie. Joe Frazier's daughter fought also. That's very true. That was a big deal for women's. I remember when women's boxing was kind of at its peak. That was a big fight.
That was a big fight. Yeah, I do kind of remember it. I don't know that I saw it, but I do kind of. I remember hearing about it now as we're talking about it. You know, but I mean, when Frazier and Ali fought, when they fought, Frazier's record at the time was 26-0 with 23 knockouts, and Ali's record was 31-0 with 25 knockouts. Wow. Two undefeated champions, won most of their fights by knockouts. Ali's career, he had 56 wins and 5 losses, and it spanned a long time. He fought for too long, but in 1971 he lost to Joe Frazier. In 73 he lost to Ken Norton. In 78, and this one surprised me, he lost to Leon Spinks. Yeah, but I mean, he'd been fighting for a long time already, taking a lot of abuse, and they came back and avenged that fight. In 1981, he actually lost to Trevor Burbuck, but this was way past his prime in way past, and that was a non-title fight.
I think he lost to Larry Holmes too.
Yeah,
I think Larry Holmes beat him pretty bad. In
1980, Larry Holmes. Yeah.
Yeah, Larry was really bummed about that.
Larry Holmes wanted them to stop the fight because he was hitting him a lot, hit him in the head a lot, hitting him hard, And he really didn't want to do that because he liked him, you know.
They were friends. Yeah, they were sparring partner. Larry Holmes was a sparring partner, so he had a relationship with him.
Exactly. And he said many times he wanted them to stop it. So anyway, so that was that as far as the win-loss record and stuff like that. And then we had let's see. All right. He retired. Ali retired from boxing in '81. He was 39 years old. And then he was diagnosed in '84, 3 years later, with Parkinson's. And he died in 2016 at 74 years old. And they say the cause of death was septic shock, a sudden drop in blood pressure. But anyway, I mean, the guy grew up amid extreme racism and segregation. Got into boxing when he was 12 years old, when a police officer, also a boxing coach, saw his potential and offered to teach him. He didn't want to box at the time, but he came around later and was trained by Fred Stone, who he credits with his stabbing style. All he credits Fred Stone.
Someone stole his bicycle and he didn't like it, so he's got into boxing because of his bicycle. Someone stole it and he could fight back.
Right on. And okay, he had 100 wins and five losses as an amateur.
Wow.
He had 2 national titles, 6 Kentucky Golden Gloves titles, 1 national athletic title, of course, the gold medal in the '60 Summer Olympics in Rome.
Yeah, I think he was born and raised in Louisville, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Louisville, Kentucky. That's right. Yeah.
Kentucky, they had the most heavyweight champions of any state in the country. There's 5.
Really?
Greg Hayes, Owen Beck, Muhammad Ali. There's 2 other. Yeah, you wouldn't think Kentucky being the place for boxing, but it is.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. No, I wouldn't. Yeah. So anyway, he won his first championship belt as a heavyweight champion by knocking out Sonny Liston in 1964 in Miami Beach. You know, that was always controversial. People still say it was like one of these hidden punches, you know, and people have tried to analyze that and analyze. A lot of people can't see that punch that supposedly knocked out Sonny Liston.
Right.
You know? And I've watched that too, and it is hard to see it. It doesn't mean it wasn't there, you know.
Right.
But it's hard to see the punch, and a lot of people just couldn't believe that he could knock out Sonny Liston, you know, because he was like, as Ali would call him, a big ugly bear that shouldn't be champion. A champ should be pretty like me, you know. But
Sonny Liston had a lot of. It didn't help the conspiracy that Sonny Liston was in debt to a lot of bookies, and he was, you know, out of the ring. Sonny Liston was kind of a little bit of a shady character from what I've read.
He was a little bit of a thug, and I think they claim that he died of a heroin overdose. But then some people think it might have been the mafia that injected him, or he was involved with some weird stuff. And he was actually pretty old for a heavideweight champ too.
He was a contracted hit guy for the mob. He didn't kill him. He roughed them up a lot. He was a collector.
Right.
He was a knee breaker.
Right. So then the second time he won the heavyweight title was in 1974 from George Foreman, the Rumble in the Jungle. Yeah. And then the third time he won the title, it's easy to get these confused. The third time was with Leon Spinks in '78 in the rematch.
Wow.
And that one, that one was a little bit of a surprise. And I always loved the cast of characters, like his corner man, Angelo Dundee.
Oh,
no, I'm sorry, Drew Bundini. Drew Bundini, the corner man. He'd go, Bundini, are we going to go? And they'd both say, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Ah, rumble, young man, rumble. Ah. And they'd do that together, you know, in each other's face when they did it. I mean, you just fall out of your chair watching them. It's so funny. But
Jamie Foxx played him in the Ali movie, and Jamie Foxx did a great job. If you've seen the Ali movie with Will Smith played Muhammad Ali and Jamie Foxx played Bundy, Jamie Foxx did an awesome job.
Yeah, that's right. And that was great. I got to go watch that movie again now that we're talking about it. But then you had Freddie Pacheco, the fight doctor, and always in Ali's corner. And Angelo Dundee was always in the corner, the trainer. And these guys just became household names. They all became famous with Ali, you know. And that was a really fun era of boxing. You know, not only was it fun. I mean, the fights were just amazing. You know, who else? I mean, today. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, I watched a fight the other night, and it was the current champion. He's actually a white Caucasian.
Tyson Fury.
Tyson Fury, yeah. And I just don't see him and the other guy from England.
The guy from England is Anthony Joshua.
Yeah,
heavyweight.
The bottom line is I knew all the names back when Ollie was fighting.
Right.
You know, and it's like if you ask me on any given day who the heavyweight champ is, who the middleweight champ is, who the lightweight champ is, and I used to know them all. I used to buy Ring magazine and things like that. It really kept track because I loved boxing. It was my favorite sport. And it's just all changed now. I don't know if it was UFC or you just don't see so much the talent pool anymore either, you know.
Royce, just by my daughter being in amateur ranks, there's nobody interested in the amateur part of it. There's very few. It's a small thing now.
Okay.
Why you see fighters going up for the championship with 10 or less fights,
Right.
which is then it went out of the country. Heavyweight championship of the world went out of the country for almost 20 years. So Deontay Wilder brought it back to the States, which was unheard of as well.
Wilder, yeah.
Right.
But I mean, people aren't watching it like they used to. I mean, these people aren't really drawing you in, you know. I mean, what have you guys watched any fights lately? I mean,
I watched the Wilder Fury. Was a pretty good trilogy of heavyweights for recent. But besides that, it's some of the middleweight guys. Bud Crawford's a good fighter. Recently just retired. I watched a lot of Floyd Mayweather fights.
Yeah,
Pacquiao was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
One of the best fighters I ever saw was kind of my era of being a little bit older, kind of after the golden era, was Roy Jones Jr. And he was a great middleweight. Actually went up to heavyweight and won a championship. But Roy Jones Jr. in his prime was probably he was voted the fighter of the 90s. So he was probably the best.
You couldn't even hit him. I mean, he was so slick out there. It was amazing.
So fast.
Yeah.
He played professional basketball too. A lot of people don't know that. Roy Jones was a basketball player. He played in the CBA. He won the middleweight championship, defended it one night, and then went and played a CBA basketball game later that night.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, that's a great Roy Jones stat.
That's impressive.
Tyson Roy Jones just fought here recently about last year?
That's a good. They did. That's right.
Oh, that's
more of kind of a sparring session, but
yeah, that's right. Yeah, a year or so ago. Yeah, that's interesting. And it was kind of, I guess it ended in a draw, or I don't think anybody was trying to really knock anybody out.
Royce, I think that your point about the UFC kind of becoming popular, but I also think the research and a lot of the medicine now that's gone into head injuries, kind of what Robbie was talking about. A lot of guys will just fight 10 amateur fights and then go to the pros. Guys don't want to fight 50 amateur fights because they're not getting paid and they're just risking injury. So why not go pro, fight 20 or 30 fights, make a paycheck, and then get the heck out of there? Because there's so much science now in medicine that's kind of figured out with the CTE with football players, and I think the reason why boxing will never be what it once was because guys just aren't warriors anymore. They just don't want to, they don't want to die in the ring.
Yeah, I was just reading out loud that Muhammad Ali had 100 amateur fights.
Oh, you'll never see that again.
You'll never see that. And I remember playing high school football, and I got my bell rung a few times, and I mean, I really got it rung a few times. I might even had concussions, but nobody seemed to care. I remember I was playing fullback on a football team, and I had strong legs. Let me put it that way. There was a 1,300-pound leg machine, and I was one of only 2 sophomores that could get it off its stands, and the rest of them were seniors and only a few juniors, So I could really, when I busted through the line, it seemed like every run was 4 or 5 yards because I hit the line so hard that I just made my way 4 or 5 yards past the line, But I also
a tough position,
and I was always slow to pull my head up and see where I should be cutting So they thought they'd teach me a lesson. So one of the coaches had me run through those spring-loaded pads. You know, you're not going to run through like this with your head up. It's going to be racking your neck. You got to go through with your head down. But if I didn't pick my head up fast enough when I got through, he was hitting my helmet with a baseball bat. And I mean, my ears were ringing and shit, you know, and I'd through that. And before I could even pick my head up, I'm getting hit with a baseball bat in the helmet. Bang, bang, bang. And I don't think they do that today at practice. You know?
No way. It's a different era.
I mean, I tell you what, I really got racked. But I mean, I had some hard hits too, helmet to helmet, you know. And yeah, I really felt like I got my bell rung several times, you know. But yeah, that could be a tough sport. We had one guy on our team that you know, hit helmet to helmet and with somebody, and it wiped out his entire memory. He was like a baby starting over again in life.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. But I mean, we'd have these drills, and maybe they still do this, but you'd have two lines of guys, and the coach would blow the whistle, and you just try to run through each other, helmet to helmet, as fast as you, as hard as you could hit, as fast as you could run. You know, no evasion. You got to go through that guy. You know, and I'll never forget. I was on the JV because I was a sophomore, and they had that. We had some really good, you know, varsity players and stuff. And the coaches wanted to see if any of the, you know, those younger guys could run against the varsity guys. So, you know, it was all the practice had broke up, and everybody's kind of like trotting toward the locker room. I was trotting a little faster than some, and the Coach Keegan yells, "Eddings, get back here!" So he wanted me to run against Jay Hopkins, who was one of our senior running backs. He was a really good player, you know. And again, we both laid flat on our backs. One had the football, one didn't. And when he blew the whistle, you popped to your feet, and you had to run through each other.
Oh.
This is the only chance I'm ever going to get to really show the coaches, because you know they might bring you up and let you play it for a couple of minutes in a game and give you a stripe as a sophomore, you know. And so man, I leaped to my feet, and with everything that I had, I knew he was taking me lightly, you know, because he was 2 years older, bigger, stronger, and a great running back. I hit him with everything I had, knocked him flat on his back, and as I was stepping on him, crossing over him, he reached up and like it was like a shoelace tackle, grabbed my foot, and I tripped and fell. And and that was like kind of the highlight of being a sophomore football player, because the coaches were all talking about me in the locker room and what I had done, you know, against one of their big backs, you know. Who, like I said,
those days are over with those head-on-head drills, man. Those are concussions waiting to happen.
Do they? Like I said, do they still do those? Blow the whistle.
They're pretty strict with practice and pad time, when you can wear helmets, and you know there's a lot of rules and regulations from what I can gather with how they kind of strap it up and go at it nowadays. It's a lot different.
Right. I can remember kind of wanting my grandson, you know, when he was 2 years old, he could throw spirals to me. You know, I'd hike the ball to him and run a couple of feet away and act like I'm really running. And he'd throw me a little spiral. You know, I had these little footballs, you know, and I had a bunch of them. And, you know, for the longest time, I really wanted him to play football, and he was playing some city league and stuff like that, starting with the flags and stuff. Because I started playing when I was in 5th grade, and it was only supposed to be for 7th and 8th graders, the Pop Warner in Henderson, Nevada. I started playing in 5th grade, and I was just getting crushed on a daily basis. And then I got a little bigger, you know, a little stronger in 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade, and then I was okay. But started playing early. But you know, when I started hearing about all the injuries and head injuries and stuff, when my grandson decided not to play later, I was actually kind of happy to hear that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, my 7-year-old, I'm not sure if I want him playing football. I don't.
Well, it's just the thing. It's like there's so many things we did. Like back in Henderson, Nevada, when you were 14 years old, you got a motorcycle license up to a certain rating horsepower, which meant you could go 65 miles an hour on the freeway, right into Vegas, out to Lake Mead, up to the dam, go exploring. And so here's all these 14-year-olds out there riding all over the streets on motorcycles, and believe me, they were scraping them up off the streets too, because there was a lot of accidents. But it was legal at 14. Later they changed it to 16, you know, after I was older. But there for the longest time, I mean, there was just all those kids. We had motorcycles on the highways going everywhere we wanted to go. And I would be really uncomfortable doing that for a 14-year-old, you know, son or daughter today, you know.
No way.
Yeah. So let me see. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Okay, so who like in the UFC, for example, I got into that, and me and some family members, we really got into enjoyed Conor McGregor because he was kind of the cocky, kind of an
Oh
always,
yeah.
you know, and now he's
Yeah.
got his proper 9 Irish whiskey, and I haven't tasted it yet. I saw it the other day.
It's okay. It's not bad.
Yeah, yeah, but so anyway, I'll probably wind up buying a bottle before too long. But
Proper 12.
anyway, Conor McGregor was a lot of fun to watch, and then of course you mentioned the boxer earlier. That was a great boxer that he fought. Yeah, Conor
Oh yeah,
fought.
Floyd Mayweather Jr.
And I think Conor must have made up $90 million or something.
Oh yeah.
I don't even knows what Mayweather made, but wow, no one will ever be able to do that again. I don't think.
Yeah, Ali's family actually reached out to Conor McGregor, and because Conor McGregor gives a lot of his, he kind of mentions Ali as one of his heroes and a guy that he kind of patented his game after. So Ali's family actually reached out to Conor McGregor, and he met the daughters and met Muhammad Ali's, I think maybe his ex-wife or maybe his widow. And
Right.
McGregor talks about how that was a special moment for him, just being acknowledged by Ali's family that,
Yeah.
you're pretty good at what you're doing, and we're honored that you kind of patented your game after Dad, kind of a deal. So there's a lot of similarities between both those guys.
It was very, very entertaining. It's the entertaining people that like the California Kid. A lighter weight guy, California Kid.
Uriah Faber.
Uriah Faber, yeah. He was very popular, and
one of my friends actually went to UC Davis with Uriah Faber.
What is your opinion of Ronda Rousey? Was she really all that good, or was there just no competition? As we were talking about Tyson earlier,
right?
He looked like a world beater, but then again, you start thinking of the people he fought and thinking of the people that were in the generation before him, and try to figure out how he.
Ronda Rousey came at the right time. I think. Yeah. Ronda Rousey was an expert in judo. She was actually an Olympian. I think she was a bronze medalist in judo. So she was really good at judo. But when it come to like the actual ground game and striking, she was not really up to par. And I think the timing of when she kind of came into the UFC, and it was kind of a perfect storm for her. But I think she was a little overhyped in my opinion.
Well, and I feel the same way, and I also feel that like Miesha Tate, for example, was quite a bit smaller in stature than Ronda Rousey, but she was still bloodier in the stand-up game. And I felt like when Ronda fought Amanda Nunes, she forgot how she got there. She is a wrestler. And she always wants to stand up now to prove that. Miesha Tate, I think, got into her head when she called her a one-trick pony. All she has is the armbar. After she lost to her for the second time. She's just a one-trick pony. She has the armbar. That's all she has, And I think she kind of got into her head. And after that, I noticed that she wanted to stand up more and prove that she wasn't a one-trick pony. And that's when she started getting beat up,
Yeah.
I mean, Holly Holmes, Amanda Nunes, I mean, they really whipped her convincingly, And it made me start wondering, well, what about the competition she had leading up to this? Were they really up to par? Or like you said, she came along at the right time when it was kind of an open field, In fact, I think that weight division almost didn't exist right before her.
Yeah, women's fighters now are a lot more developed. I don't think Ronda Rousey would be who she was if she came along today. I don't think her striking skills are up to par. Women now are just unreal. The weight classes, and you mentioned Amanda Nunes. Yeah. I mean, what a phenomenal fighter she is. So
who just lost. Amanda Nunes just lost.
Yeah, she did. That was a huge upset.
A huge upset. Huge upset. Yeah. I don't know what the rematch is going to look like. Maybe it'll turn into another trilogy. They each win one.
It very well could. There's a lot of money to be made in rematches and trilogies for sure.
A lot of money to be made. I guess it just depends. If Amanda Nunes wins really convincingly the second fight, there may not be a third fight. But if it's a good fight for a period of time, there'd be a third fight, And Conor, I think Conor signed a multi-year, multi-fight contract, and so he's slowly trying, I think, just work through his contract. Well, I think once he gets through that, he'll never fight again.
Yeah, his days are numbered. I think he's earned a paycheck. He's multi-weight champion. There's not a lot more for him to prove. And when you got
I mean, it's like any fighter. Once when you're hungry, it's a little easier to work out in the gym for hours on end.
Oh yeah.
But once you get some success, now that's a different story. That changes you. You have an opportunity to eat where you want, drink what you want, go out with your friends, have lavish meals, party. And boy, where does the discipline come from once you reach that kind of a pinnacle financially? To go back in there into the gym and sweat like that.
One guy said it's hard to get up in the morning and do road work at 5 a.m. when you got $100 million in the bank.
Right.
Or you're sleeping in silk sheets. It's hard to do work when you're sleeping in silk sheets.
Right. Caitlin says, very true, Greg. Hey, Bob, how you doing, buddy? I met Leon Spinks in the early 90s. My attorney bought Leon's contract. Leon was a janitor at a grade school in Addison, Illinois at the time. Wow. That's an interesting story. A janitor in a grade school.
Rags to riches right there.
Won the title from him in 78. So 12 years later, he was a janitor.
Wow.
One thing about boxing, no champions are created from wealth. They all come from nothing.
Right.
Well, yeah, and that makes perfect sense,
Yeah, you look at the Mayweather, the latest, I guess you'd say, legend of recent last 20 years. His uncle and his dad were both fighters, and actually, his dad fought Sugar Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather Sr. His uncle, who passed away a few years ago, Roger Mayweather, was his trainer for years. He fought a lot of classic middleweights too. So, he had it in his blood. There was no doubt what he was going to do for a living. He was boxing at a young age, and he was kind of trained to be the chosen one. And he retired 50-0 and with a lot of money in the bank. So it's hard to complain about what Floyd did in the sport.
And a lot of cars in his garage.
A lot of cars in his garage and a lot of properties all over the world.
He had an off and on relationship with his dad for a long time too.
Yeah, him and his dad were real butted heads a lot. They butted heads a lot. Yeah. Exactly. His uncle kind of took over in the latter years and trained him, Roger. And then Roger passed away a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago. But yeah, it's funny because Floyd likes to talk a lot of trash too. But if you watch interviews with Floyd Sr., he is a funny guy, man. He has some great one-liners, some great interviews. Him and Conor McGregor were going at it at a press conference promoting their fight.
Really?
And oh man, it is awesome seeing my son's going to whip your butt, and Conor kind of going back at him. Oh, you're going to wake your son up in the morning. He's going to be asleep all night after I knock him out. I mean, it was some really good back and forth banter. If you get a chance, YouTube Roger or Floyd Sr. and Conor McGregor press conference. It's some classic stuff.
That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of that on tape of Muhammad Ali. He was quite a comedian. So what do you got there, Robbie?
Huh?
What do you got there? Oh no, I was looking at the picture behind you. It looked like you were holding something up at first.
Oh no, I just moved my camera around. That's my daughter made that for me for best dad ever.
Best dad ever. That's nice.
Yeah, I got my Army medals on my wall, and people look at them. I got a Bronze Star and Army Commendation Medal for Desert Storm, and tell them those accolades are nothing to me. I got a Best Dad Ever coffee cup, and these signs she makes me. That's the best award I ever got.
Yeah, that's way cool.
That sounds like an awesome man cave there, Robbie. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
my granddaughter is a insurance underwriter, and she also does Pampered Chef and does well at both. But for some reason, she decided she needed another career at the same time, and she started making these fancy cups. So, like always, cool. I got a Jimi Hendrix one, and then some of the girls, some of my friends on the show had my granddaughter make me this Margaritaville cup, and it's got these kind of fake ice cubes on top and a lime and a straw, and on the back it says that frozen concoction that helps me hang on. Anyway,
old Buffett.
Pretty cool. Yeah, it's always special when you get something like that, especially if one of your kids is involved making it. I mean, those are Those, you know, to me, I got to be honest with you guys. My youngest daughter's in her 40s, but I'd have to say that those were the greatest years of my life, having my kids at home.
Oh yeah.
And I've had some fun adventures. I had, well, 2 Harleys that ran and one I was custom building before the last recession, which kind of took a hit, construction in the last recession. But and I've had some times. I mean, going to Sturgis, South Dakota on my motorcycle, and up and down the state, and you know, out of state and things like that. I had some fun adventures, and I've owned an airplane, had my pilot's. I guess I still have my pilot's license, but I haven't had a physical in years. That's what activates it's your physical. And we used to go flying all the time. I'd fly the family up and down the state, and I'll never forget the night I got my pilot's license. I came home all excited and said, "We're going to fly to Harris Ranch, you know, over in the valley. They got their own little airport, right?" And so what was I thinking? Here it is, pitch black. We're going to fly over the mountains and land at this little narrow airstrip that when the wind's blowing hard, it's like one of the hardest airports to land at. And we fly over there. We're in the valley. We've crossed the mountains. And I get hit by the worst turbulence I've experienced since. I mean, the whole time I flew, I've never seen anything like it. And I tell you what, the plane was just flipping up on one wing and then flipping up on the next wing and going up, coming down. And my wife was just losing it, you know. And all 3 of my daughters were in the back seat laughing, you know. They didn't know. Even I was trying to, you know, be cool, you know. And I finally got in a slow 180 turn, still bouncing and bobbing up and down. Got in a 180 turn and just started flying back in the direction I came from. And finally, I finally flew out of it, you know. But it was scary. I mean, it was a scary thing to do your very first night of having your pilot's license.
Man.
And another time we flew to Catalina Island, you know. And you know, every plane has a glide ratio. If you get an engine out, that plane, you trim it up to the right speed for that plane, and it will coast, you know, for, depending on your elevation, X amount of miles, you know. Maybe if you're at 10,000 feet, that plane will go for 15 miles before it gets to the ground, you know. So I did my homework, and I thought, well, you know what, if I have an engine out, I want to make sure I can either turn around and go back to Ventura or whatever, or just proceed to Catalina Island and land, you know. And so when I got there, I was so damn high. The planes flying in from Long Beach looked like they were about this big because they were right on top of the water. It took me almost longer to spiral down and land than it took me to fly there.
Wow.
But we did a lot of fun stuff, and I had a lot of fun times with friends. Some of the fights we talked about and going places and things like that. But I still say that the greatest time in my life was having little kids at home.
Oh yeah.
Pretty damn special.
Yeah, I love my 7-year-old. He's a handful, but there's nothing like being a father. I'll tell you.
They're a handful. I know.
He's a handful. He's all boy, man. He goes and goes until the battery runs out of juice, and he runs me ragged.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Believe me.
Yeah, I think my connection's getting a little choppy, Royce.
Pardon me?
My connection's getting a little choppy. I don't know if you guys can hear me clear, but you guys are chopping out a little bit. So,
are we? Yeah.
If I lose you guys, I really appreciate you having me on, Robbie.
No,
appreciate it too.
I think we're you know, if you get a chance and you want to subscribe, just
I will
click on the subscribe button, and it helps the show grow. And we'll get together again sometime. You know a lot about sports.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll have more sports shows down the road too.
Sounds great, Royce. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, Greg, we appreciate you coming. And Robbie, I always appreciate you coming. And I want to thank Caitlin and Bob and Robert and the folks that came to the chat and supported us here tonight. We appreciate every one of you. And so we're going to sign off now, and thank you all very much. Bye, Robbie.
Bye, buddy.
Okay, take care.
See you, buddy.